Hey guys, this is Naruto, your NN host for Avail Hot Takes, and today we have Seb from Sophon, and then we have Anurag, co-founder of Avail. Um, we have a very special announcement today, as you guys saw it actually yesterday, but day before yesterday, that Avail and Sophon are partners. Sophon is utilizing Avail for the DA needs, and Sophon is big on entertainment, nodes, and consumerism. So today we invited Seb for to talk more about it. So Seb, as a ritual, can you please introduce yourself, what you've been working on with Sophon lately, and then Anurag, so can you go later on?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having us, guys. So my name is Seb. I'm the founder and CEO of Sophon. Previously, I was at Matter Labs, so the company that's built CK Sync and the code base that Sophon is using. And Sophon is a consumer-focused, entertainment-focused roll-up that's using Avail as DA.
Yeah, quickly, let me also introduce myself, Anurag, co-founded Avail, previously founded Polygon, been in the space since 2017, been building this tech since 2020, and we and Seb got to talking a few months back, and he told me of his decision to start Sophon, and like we were pleased to be working with a team like Sophon, who's like bringing net new use cases to the ecosystem, and so very thrilled to be working with them on this.
Yep, thanks a lot, guys. And then just for like people who are joining, the main thing about Sophon and the major key feature that I'm excited about why the Sophon and Avail partnership makes sense is because Avail is also working with Sophon for custom light clients so that we can provide like the scalability solution for any kind of on-chain entertainment. I have not personally seen such implementation for custom light clients, so this will be probably first in the industry, and definitely that's why I'm very excited about it. So yeah, thanks a lot, guys, for that. I think this really matters a lot. But yeah, moving on, Sebastian, I know you have been in the space for a long time, and you said you've been at Meta Labs. So I wanted to ask, what are your views on like general consumerism are? The Sophon website, it says like unlocking new era of entertainment on chain. So what are your thoughts on what are your plans, or what do you think how we are, getting more consumers to Web3 or just in
Yep.
general?
So the idea for Sophon came, I've been in this space for quite a long time, and a lot of people started in crypto just using Ethereum, then maybe moving to L2s or using things like Avalanche or during last cycle or Solana now. And you have these generalized blockchains where you can do various DeFi activities. You can launch different types of protocols or contracts there. But a lot of them kind of lack, they're very generalist, let's say. And the other thing is that the crowd, the crypto native crowd is very, very active, but it's not really growing. Most people who are early adopters in this space or, technologists have already been onboarded to crypto. And so the pot is not really growing, right? And it's, I think, for our industry to really kind of graduate to the next step of its growth, it's important to start thinking about how do non-early adopters or non-technologists behave? How do they think? How do they interact with technology? How did they interact with the internet, with Web 2 over the last decade or 15 years? And what do you need to do in crypto in order to make the same thing happen? I was a big DeFi user. I don't think that DeFi, at least in the way that it's presented now, for instance, is what's going to onboard all of the non-crypto savvy, non-tech savvy people. It's complicated. There's things like impermanent loss that you have to understand. There's all these different protocols that have to work together, be composable. I don't think that this is what's going to onboard the next millions and millions of people. So for me, it was quite clear. Let's look at what are the things that most people around the world have in common. What do they like to do? And how can we start to think about these experiences on chain? And also, how can we present things on chain in a way that's much more product platform friendly, right? And we decided that, if we want to focus on consumers, then entertainment as an overall vertical is something that makes a lot of sense, whether it's gaming, mobile, or online. Um, Things like sports betting, gambling, lifestyle things like ticketing, music, and then obviously working with different types of AI companies because that enables a whole new kind of subvertical in all of these different entertainment aspects. And we decided to build Sophon. So we started doing this at the beginning of the year. We raised a very nice seed round, and then we did a note sale, which in our eyes was a great way to kind of democratize access to the network early on. We raised around 21,000 ETH, which at the time was roughly $65 million. And then we started building. And when we were in Dubai, I sat down with Anurag, Kyle, and some of the other guys on the team, and we started discussing, okay, how can Avail not just be a data availability layer for us, but how can we also integrate it into how the network functions? And I think we'll talk a little bit about that later, but it was super important for us to also create kind of use cases that were good from a tech or crypto perspective, but that we could also kind of bake into a very easy and pleasant to use user interface that all of our node holders could profit from. So we've been building this for the last 6 months, and we're almost ready to go to market with it.
That's pretty cool. Actually, I really like when you said like how can Avail be more than a DA layer, and which is I think one of the most important things for people to realize that we are also building more things with the DA, but there are more use cases that you can unlock specifically with the DA. Maybe there are no innovative solutions yet, but we are working on it. But yeah, thanks a lot. I think those things are really important. A lot of like people who came to crypto, they came in with as a DeFi user, but then there's no real consumerism that I see so far. So moving a little bit of the gears, Anurag sir, you previously worked with Polygon, and now you built Polygon. Now you're building Avail. I've always liked or looked at the vision of how you onboard people or consumers to crypto. So, what are your thoughts here? Following up with Sebastian's idea, especially from Avail's point of view.
Yeah, I think I mean as soon as we started interacting with Seb, right? Like and Seb, like I thought was very clear on the positioning of Sophon. Like he exactly knew where he wanted to go, and so sometimes like or most of the times it's good to know what not to do. Like and so I thought that was something I really liked about Seb and the Sophon team in general. And so I think they're pretty focused on the kind of sectors, the kind of apps, the kind of community culture that they want to inculcate on Sophon, right? Like, so I think I really like that very opinionated sort of a stance. I think it's very important to stand for what you want, right? Like, so I think that's like a key thing that I really admire. In general, like in my years at Polygon and with Avail as well, right? In general, we've gone through various stages of the industry. We also, of course, everyone is learning what works, what doesn't work. There was DeFi before, NFTs came after. We have meme coin mania right now, for example, and so on. But I think one aspect of all of this is that all of this is like tokenization at scale. And tokens in the Web3 sense generally mean financial assets or NFTs, uh, for example. But tokenization in the real sense is much more generic. Like your identity is a token, your gaming activity is a token, your music NFTs are a token, your health records are a token, for example, right? Like, so everything is a token. And even the real world is going through that, like cards are getting tokenized, for example, and so on. I think thinking through that lens, right? Like, how can you, and if you're going to look at the demographic that is most active on some of the infrastructure that we are building, it's actually very young, 15 to 20 to 25-year old. That's a pretty big segment, and all of them are increasingly spending time on mobile, on social channels. Like, they don't get information from TV ads or print ads, right? Like, it's from their social network, for example. And so all of this is in all points to the direction where how can we kind of tokenize this attention, really, from where people are spending time on the channels that they are most active on. Yes, I think Sophon has gotten the approach and the focus areas right, and like, we are very happy to kind of like collaborate with them. And of course, the starting point of this collaboration is for sure helping build up their chain infra. But we had this wonderful opportunity to also kind of add more utility to their node sale participants, and I think that's like a very clever thing that the Sophon team is doing in general, to provide more utility so that users could verify things like and data ability sample from a very intuitive interface, for example. So I think all of this, pretty excited about.
Yeah, I think you summed up the whole thing very correctly. Everything is can be token, but how it is utilized is also another way, and we still lack that consumer mindset for crypto. So yeah, definitely agreed. But let me ask you this, and it's a little bit more of like a follow-up because you guys already explained a bit. How does this partnership work out when it comes to the custom light clients for Sophon? What I'm trying to understand is like, of course, a lot of people understand what light clients are, what custom light clients are, and in a definition is also pretty straightforward. But like, how does it help Sophon Network or Avail or any of the partners? What do you think, Seb, Rag?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. So when we did the node sale, it was really important for us to give a like a real use case to the nodes that we sold, because we sold around 110,000 nodes to roughly 5,500 wallets. So obviously, all L2s and all rollups currently are completely centralized, right? All of them run a single sequencer. Nobody's decentralized the sequencer yet. Everybody has plans to do so. And when that's the case for ZK Sync and their code base, then we'll be able to implement these things as well. But since we were going to use DA Avail as a DA layer, then when we sat down with Anurag and his team, we started discussing, okay, well, how can we do something that's not bullshit, basically. I said I'm going to do this node sale, but I can't just do a node sale to raise funds and the nodes have no use case, right? Then
Okay.
if it doesn't stand up in court, it's
Yep.
not a good look for the project, and it's just overall kind of a shame, and it doesn't really have long lasting legs. So we were brainstorming, and actually Anurag had this great idea of, let's actually have the nodes participate as light clients and perform data sampling on the Avail network. It's great for the Avail network because it enhances its security, obviously, and at the same time, it's a great way for all of our users to actually be doing some positive work. This is very light work that can be done in your browser, for instance. It's not like you need to have a server farm at home. And over time, those that are doing this are earning rewards.
Interesting. Okay. So that's pretty cool. So do you think, and it's just an idea that came up into my mind. I think you said like there are 110,000 nodes that were sold. So that means that these nodes, do you think, can be resold it, like kind of like, any, because it's at the end of the day token, right? So do you think like
Yeah.
that's doable?
So yeah. So if we look at things a little, if we zoom out a little bit, what the nodes, we call them nodes, but what they are in practice are NFTs. They're ERC 721s, right?
Yeah.
And what they are is it's our early community. So we said we're taking 20% of our total token supply, and we're giving that as emissions to the people who bought these nodes over 36 months after the network launches, right? Which means we've basically sold 20% of our business. We've sold 20% of our network for people who want to be early adopters of it, right? And that's how we raised $65 million doing so. So those people are effectively your day one community, right? Because they've basically taken money out of their pocket, they've given it to you because they trust the project, because they want to be involved in it, and because they want to be long your token in a sort of a semi-liquid form day one. So for me, the big focus is to then make that node ownership as valuable as possible. So yes, people are getting 20% of tokens, but there's a lot more. All of the projects that we're working with who will be doing airdrops and having their own tokens, we always negotiate a portion of the supply that goes directly to the node holders, right? When the network will start to decentralize and these node holders can start to actually participate in the decentralized consensus, they will also receive part of the fees that the network generates, right? So the idea is that if at the application level, we work with some really great partners and they generate a lot of transactions and a lot of interest, because you must remember that the gas token for Sophon is Sophon, is our token, is the base token. So if you are successful at the application level and generating a lot of transactions, that's generating, people need to buy your token to pay for gas. And then if people who are running the infrastructure underlying are receiving rewards in the form of this token, you basically have a stable dividend paying business. So ultimately, looking at the long term, we want people who are owning these nodes to be basically getting regular income from participating in various activities on the network.
Interesting. Okay, that makes a lot of sense on how you envision the whole Sophon network, especially with the Sophon token as well, and then any kind of applications that are launched on it. Okay. Yeah, definitely, love the whole idea. Quickly, I want to ask both of you as well. This is on a similar level, and it's more like a follow-up. But when we say we have these custom light clients, and then people are running these custom light clients, do you think like end user like my brother, friends, or anyone would care about running these light clients? Let's say running them, I don't know, on a phone or on their laptops, that kind of stuff. On how does it improve like any kind of onboarding process if it were to improve?
Yeah, I
Anurag?
mean, I'll try. Yeah, I'll try to answer this, right. Like, so see, as Seb said, right. Like, I mean, it's important to kind of see this the light client, custom light client Sophon uh, arrangement more than just a technical thing, right? Like, it's really, as Seb said, it's an innovation in terms of how do you build this sticky community in general. The idea is that, like, so there's now a lot of L2s being spun up, but it's just not kind of choosing any stack, for example, and then just rolling your own. That like any infrastructure provider, like a RAS provider, will do that for you. The idea is actual work starts after that, right? Like, I mean, how do you kind of bootstrap the ecosystem? How do you kind of create early traction, early like get to critical mass, for example, have a more sustainable sticky community? See, all of these are important questions that right now I don't think a lot of teams are really focusing too much on. And so that's again like going back to the earlier conversation. Like, when I met Seth the first time, I thought he was very, very clear about how he was going to go about building Sophon, right? Like, and so all these things, like the node sales, for example, very strategic in the sense that, as he explained, they've reserved like 20% of the token supply to people who participate in the node sale. The node sale is really there. The participants are really their early community who will then be, kind of course, of course they have access, eventually will have access to the entire 20% after some point in time, but essentially they are also your early community, which also gets like access to exclusive opportunities on the Sophon network, early access to dApps, more incentives, airdrops, that sort of a thing in general. And so this whole community cultivation bit is very, very important. And when we were talking, I thought getting like this particular the Lightline node being run as part of this activity, it's certainly of course very, very useful for end user verifiability, but it's also a useful tool to kind of get the community involved, right? Like, I mean, essentially, so that they feel part of the network. For example, it's not just a financial transaction in that sense. And of course, you don't need a server farm to run this. You can even run it on mobile phone or watch, for example. But also just to answer your broader question, right? It's not going to be super hard or unintuitive. All of this is going to be packaged in a neat interface, very easy for people to run, and so most people will not even feel that they're running something very heavy, for example. So
Mhm. Yeah, I think this was my question to, like Avail team internally as well. Like, how does it, how hard it is for an end user or my brother or like for someone who's not in crypto, but they're using some kind of like application that uses Lightline from behind on the back. So do they have to do something, or the Lightline turns on itself, something like that? These are like, I think, general questions that, even the Web3 people folks are sometimes figuring out or how to do it. But yeah, that was my question. So Sam, like just changing the gears here because we've talked a little bit more on the lifelines, the note sale, pretty good ideas. I want to ask you, like, what are some cool things about like Sophon that, just you can tell me, what are you excited about apart from like, any technical things? Maybe something why it's being built on ZK Sync. Why do you think, it's gonna see the dApps or builders coming in, some kind of things that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I think so. There's kind of two ways to answer this question. One, I mean, we are having a sort of a technical conversation, so we can talk about technical things.
For
I think
sure.
the fact that the ZK Sync code base has native account abstraction embedded in the network means that you can do a lot of cool stuff that abstracts away any kind of complexity. And then I also think it's super cool that also because you have this native account abstraction, you can have a custom based token, right? There's not that many, most L2s or rollups are using ETH as their token, which is, I guess, nice for ETH. But then if they just have their own governance token, there's not that much interest in the actual governance token, right? Whereas here, we're able to actually have the Sophon token be a commodity token because you need it to pay for gas. And then from a paymaster perspective, for instance, when we launch Sophon, we're going to be launching a kind of gasless experience. So people will be able to come on Sophon, use applications on Sophon, whether it's games, whether it's ticketing, gambling, casino, whatever, and there'll just be no gas. So it's going to really feel like using a normal Web2 website. And a lot of the partners that we worked with, some are very crypto native, and I think crypto native people will enjoy them. But the focus for me was also to work with more Web2 companies that have existing product market fit, that have existing users, but they want to start to rotate their backend or their business logic to using crypto. And we've done this with a couple games, mobile games, for instance, that are on the Apple Store, that are on the Google Play Store, that have already done hundreds of millions of downloads since they've been out, and they're now going to have, they're going to come out with a new version that'll be on chain, and that'll use crypto. And I think that in of itself is pretty cool. But also, if we're successful in making them successful, it's probably going to start to change the paradigm that we're in, where play to earn can actually work. I think a lot of people say that Web3 gaming is not going to work, or that play to earn is not going to work, and I really
Okay.
disagree. I think that
Mhm.
just up until now, we've done things in a way that's not so, it's maybe too crypto focused. But if you basically fork the experiences that people have in Web two, or in normal gaming, if it's exactly the same thing or better, but that you have the added crypto element, you can completely change the way people think about crypto and gaming. And I think you just need a couple people, a couple applications to be successful with this. I think the most recent one was Off the Grid on Avalanche. I think it's the first time a game really people just played because it was fun, and realized like, hey, actually having all my assets on chain and being able to trade them is great. And you just need a couple of those to be really successful for then the whole gaming industry to start to convert to using crypto. And I think if we do, now these things take time, obviously they take years, but if Sophon can play a part in that revolution, then I think it would be a huge contribution to our space, and it would be a big evolution for crypto in general. And that's what I think is most exciting to work on.
I see. Okay, so this is just a follow-up. Because my mind came out to me, my mind got this question that when we say that we have these Web3 gaming, projects, we need to build more. There will be a gasless experience, so you can have similar Web2 things. Why don't we try to be the infrastructure for these Web2 games that are already out there? Because what I've seen from Web3 gaming is that everyone's trying to build their own gaming platform or some kind of games, and then it just sets us a few years, um, in the distant future. Like we are far apart because everyone's trying to build their own game. They have to build the Web2 infrastructure, then they have to build Web3 infrastructure. Why don't we provide that Web3 infrastructure to these already built out games?
Yeah,
And
I think
this is a
it's
question for both of you. Sorry, yeah.
I think it's because at the moment people are still see this as a kind of like a take all situation, and they don't necessarily want to share. But ultimately, like what matters the most, whether it's crypto or whether you're working just in general Web two, it's distribution, right? And you need to have, the way that Web two kind of grew and big tech became successful is because they had platform experiences, right? And these platforms then had distribution rails. And crypto kind of like threw that out of the window because we said, okay, the network is the platform, but the user experience sucks, right? Because you have application A, application B, application C, various types of wallets, and the user experience becomes completely homemade, and you need to figure out everything for yourself. That works for technologists like us, but it doesn't work for your sister, your cousin who's never used crypto before, right? And kind of the
Sure.
North Star I give to the team is I want to send Sophon.xyz to someone who's never used crypto before, and that they can onboard and start using applications on their own without having to ask anybody any questions. I think having a really deep focus on user experience, thinking of things as platforms, thinking about your product first, and yeah, the user interfaces and experience people have, you can kind of reimagine how all of this happens.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. Anurag, sir, you want to put in some thoughts, or you want to move to the next question?
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree in the sense that, see, essentially, I think we've built a lot of infra, and some of the infra that has been recently in the past couple of years, right? Like, I mean, we are now at the stage where we have to be optimizing for net new users, right? Like, I mean, essentially, where do we get more broader adoption for? And so that means like let's say gasless experiences, for example, more intuitive experiences, more mobile experiences, for example, getting experience builders in Web 2 to start experimenting with this infrastructure, and to really to make that easy for a lot of mainstream developers to experiment and tinker with this, right? Like, I mean, essentially, um, right now there is certainly a high bar, not only for users, but I would say also for developers outside of um, crypto uh, crypto native developers. Like, it takes a lot of time for people to kind of get here. There's a steep learning curve, and so certainly we need to make it as easy for mainstream developers to access this, because remember, all of this, as I've also said, takes time, right? Like, I mean, if you kind of look back at the time when the first mobile OS came into the picture, it took probably a few years for something like an Uber and an Instagram to emerge, right? It didn't come on day one. It required like a lot of developers hammering away on iterations that eventually led to the insight that something like Uber could be made, which made use of the best attributes of what a mobile experience could bring, things like GPS, camera, and so on, right? Like,
Yep.
so reducing developer friction is key to also eventually getting breakthrough user apps, right? Like, so I think all of them go hand in hand.
Yep. Okay. That definitely I agree with most of the idea. Yeah. So those were my major questions on like about what people can build on Sophon, or what kind of a consumerism look like. But just moving on, because we have to respect the time as well. I know you guys are busy. Seb and Anurag, like this is one other question. Like, what are some of these I know you guys have said like there's some gaming things that we can do, some kind of creative things. What are other creative products that you want to like actually see on Sophon on, let's say, this quarter, probably next quarter,
Yeah,
while also
I'll
utilizing Avail?
I'll so I'll give you an example for
Yeah.
what I'd like to see. It's not going to be this quarter though; it'll be next quarter. Um, and this is something that I want to see on Sophon, but it's something that I just expect to see in general. Um, so people are, crypto is very free in a way, right? When you put out these protocols, anybody can use them and launch whatever they want off of them, right? And I think it's the kind of underlying infrastructure and innovations that allow people to create communities, to create culture. If look at OpenSea. OpenSea kind of as an infrastructure allowed people um, to really start to trade NFTs. Right? You could do it before, but OpenSea kind of put that on the map. And then you had an improvement. You had Blur, which financialized NFTs and allowed people to trade them. And then you had things like Unibot, Banana, which allowed people to snipe shitcoins in their Telegram channels. And then you had Dex Screener, which already existed, but made, kind of improved the way that it was presenting contract discovery. And then you have things like Pump Fund, etc. So every time you have these new infrastructure innovations, and they allow people to then build things on top. And so one thing in general that I'm quite bullish on is zk-TLS. So people using zk-TLS to basically leverage consumer habits in a Web2 sense, but using crypto. And I think that's going to start to gain traction probably in the first 2 quarters next year.
Um, Interesting. Yeah, I've seen some zk-TLS ideas here and there. I know someone building zk-TLS idea, and it came from like a Wheels hackathon, which is like a big thing for me as a DevRel, because I was at ECC. Someone built a zk-TLS idea. They won the hackathon. It's just a normal, and then now they're raising. So I think they're close to raising that
Yeah.
or finishing the round. So that's pretty cool idea. So yeah, zk-TLS, I think that it's gonna gain momentum probably in a while. A lot of people still don't believe or still have questions about it. Do you want to like expand a little bit more? And Anurag, like, you want to talk about it more as well?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So yeah, I mean, so Seb already beat me to this, but actually, we just introduced a team to Sophon gaming focused team, which is actually working on bringing gaming activity graphs, like existing big games, to Sophon. So I mean, their main value prop really is, like creating, like if you could look at, like, let's say big games like Dota, chess, and other League of Legends and so on, right? Like, I mean, if you kind of look at that sort of gaming user base, it's huge, but esports tournaments are few and far between, right? Like, it's only for the top tier players. And so what this one team is doing is democratizing that, building tournaments for the long tail of users, right? Like, I mean, gamers play, like 8 hours, 16 hours a day, and can can they, like compete against each other at all levels, for example, right? Like, and so this team, particular team, uses zktls, for example, to stream data from Steam, for example, and Valorant and other gaming providers to kind of, like create this innovative new use case, for example. So this is one example, right? Like, I mean, there are other one more team I've been talking to. He's been, like they want to create, and like tools for creating AI assisted influencers, not AI influencers, but AI, like create your influencer using AI tools. And so the insight there, and how they're leveraging crypto, is in the sense that anyone can create an influencer. Of course, they have to bring their creative energy in, but it platform provides all these tools, and you can have like a token attached to the influencer, for example, and so on. So I think all of these use cases, like we are pushing to Sophon, for example, in general. And so I think, like, these kind of categories, like the intersection of gaming, like zktls, for example, AI, uh, for specific purposes, right? Like for specific entertainment or similar use cases, right? Like, I think Sophon will be a magnet for this going forward.
I think we can also have some kind of this pump.fun, but like kind of with an AI agent. That this is just a random idea, but people can build a lot of similar ideas on Sophon for sure. Okay, so yeah, I think I have few final questions for you guys. One of them is like, what are your, we have talked so much about the gaming, we have talked so much about the consumerism. What are your thoughts about like how long are we gonna take for this idea or of consumerism or people, consumers to bring in to crypto or like for it to go mainstream? What are the ways some that you think that we can accelerate it? This acceleration being like, what are some things where the Web2 user doesn't really need to, realize that he's a Web3 user at this point. His crypto is
Yeah,
being, gas less or some kind of these things. The UX is better. What are your general thoughts about that?
I think we wouldn't have been able to do these things a few years ago. I think it was really the last few years was a very big leap forward in terms of infrastructure. Like people kind of meme that, yeah, most of crypto at the moment is just trading shit coins or meme coins, but there's so much work that's been done on the infrastructure side, whether it's building different types of L2s, proving systems, um, be it building data availability layers to be able to reduce costs. Like a lot of stuff had to be done so that we could get costs to really a low and acceptable range, and also to be able to get throughput, to start solving throughput, right? To be able to run actually scalable protocols that just wouldn't break when a lot of people use them. right? Because otherwise, what's the point of using crypto if stuff breaks when you use it? And I really think that we're pretty much there now, and that's why the focus should now be at the application layer. Hence, why people are taking a lot of interest into consumer-based things now, because consumers are using just the application layer, right? They don't. Your end consumer is not interested in the network or the protocol layer. They want to use the application layer, and using things like account abstraction, etc. I think a lot of you're going to have this moment. I think it's going to happen in the next 12 to 18 months, where people start realizing, okay, like it's not so difficult anymore to build, and you can build things that just don't really have the stigma or the difficulty attached with the way crypto was traditionally. And you're just going to have this step forward in this new user experience.
Interesting.
And
Just to follow.
then people can build anything, right? Like after
Yeah.
it's very difficult to reverse engineer a use case, right?
Yes.
So typically, when you're in business school, people say, okay, think of how you want your consumer to behave, and then reverse engineer it and build something for them. It doesn't work like that. What you need to do is build, is have the best kinds of infrastructures that then allow. That's why I was making this point on zk-TLS, because it's a new innovation that allows people to build stuff. So I'm almost sure that in the next 6 months, or a bit more or less, we'll have a cool application in crypto that uses zk-TLS. I don't know where it's going to be built, and I don't know what it's going to do, because you have to have experimentation, iteration. It could be anything, but that something cool is going to come out that uses zk-TLS. This I'm almost certain of, and so we should always be thinking about what do the technical advances allow us to do, and then try and work with as many teams possible who are capitalizing on trying to innovate here. And you will have winners that will come out. This is for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I had a follow-up question to that. But I wanted to ask you, like, when you say like we have built this infrastructure, and like, this was my second question, or like the question after this, that do you think like Sophon would have been, where it is right now, or succeed in like if we were to do it 3 years ago? Of course, we didn't have the technology. A lot of things have changed. We have made a lot of progress, but with these advancement in the technology, and like this is a question for you and Rag as well, do you think that it has also become a little bit harder for people to like learn things? This is because if I were an end user who has never been into crypto, and I just got a MetaMask or a Rainbow wallet, I have probably one ETH on base. Now I have to learn like how to bridge, which is the best bridge, these kind of infrastructure things. Do you think like that may be also a little bit of hindrance to the consumers coming on chain? What are your thoughts over there?
No, so I think, see, infrastructure is in blockchain is undergoing a massive change from what it was when it began, right? I mean, architectures, the blockchain architectures that we began with was this idea of there being a single chain with lots of nodes, and like these nodes re-executing transactions. And so all the early blockchains were really these more monolithic sort of chains, right? Like, so think Bitcoin, Ethereum, and anything that followed after that. And around 2020, that thinking started changing. I mean, even before that, we had something called Plasma, but like 2020, like rollups were being like starting to come online. And so we are undergoing this massive change where instead of scaling on one particular chain, because I don't think you can fit all the world's transactions into any one single chain, so you will always need to go into this more vertical scaling technique, which is the roll-up centric roadmap. And so I mean, so we are in the midst of that, right? Like, I mean, of course, we did, like, the last 3-4 years, the industry has been doing a lot of high quality work on that's things like zk, just to get a zk evm up and running, for example, roll ups up and running, data availability layers, and so on, right? Like, so it requires a lot of effort. Doesn't When all of this is not on production, it looks like very flimsy, in terms of, like, infrastructure projects getting a lot of funding, for example, and so on. But you have to realize that, um, like, I always like to give this example of Apple Pay, right? Like, I mean, today you can go to a store, tap your phone, and like the payment is done. But
Yeah.
imagine the kind of infrastructure that runs in the backend, for all of this to work, right? Like, I mean, your Apple Pay needs to have NFC capability. It needs to have talk to a NFC enabled POS machine, or a device, for example, that has to communicate with the Visa servers, with the bank servers, for example. And so there's a lot of back and forth happening, and it's very sophisticated infrastructure running in the backend. And but the consumer doesn't know, because there's a lot of effort and thought that has gone into abstracting this entire experience. And so for a long time, it doesn't seem like the infrastructure is working, until suddenly one day it does, right? Like, I mean, and so I think this is exactly what's happening with crypto right now. It might seem to be very fragmented, very scattered,
Yes.
like things like that. But I mean, the infrastructure guys are doing what they like do best. For example, building better and better things, so that the end actual end user experience can be very smooth, and that will happen, uh, as we are now starting to see.
Yep. Okay.
I love that
So
example of Apple
yeah,
Pay, by the way.
that's what I was gonna say. That's what I was gonna say. It's a nice example. I think Anurag takes like a lot of like these, Web2 examples and then uh, makes them very easily understandable for everyone here. But yeah, those were my major questions to you guys. Do you guys have like any closing thoughts before we, call it off? What are you most excited about in, end of this quarter, by the end of this quarter, next quarter? Um, how can people reach out to you and how can they contribute to Sophon and Avail ecosystems?
I'm most excited about obviously launching mainnet, but there's a lot of exciting things, applications and stuff, obviously. But I am really proud of what my team has built, um, using Avail and using the light clients. And I think here it's a non-trivial exercise that happened. Like, a lot of engineering hours went into it, um, and also into presenting it in a way that's like the end user will find it very easy to use. Um, and I just think a lot of people are gonna look at it and think, it's maybe a bit more of like a nerdy thing, because I think, the end consumer will not realize this, but that's okay. But I think the people in the crypto space and people who understand the tech will look and think like, oh shit, like the Sophon engineers actually built something pretty cool. And I'm proud of the team for what they've done so far on that end, and I'm looking forward to being able to present uh, this to the market in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think concur with Seb. Like, Sophon team has been, like, extremely collaborative, extremely diligent in kind of, like, working with us, getting the light client up to speed, and in a manner which, abstracts this from people in general. But most I'm bullish about, like, Sophon, the Sophon ecosystem in general. Like, I predict that in the next 6 months, we are going to see some sort of breakthrough application on Sophon, right? Like, I mean, I think the whole culture about, attracting apps, that will attract a certain type of builder, uh, and I think that will lead to the right outcomes.
Okay. Yeah, those were my major questions. Thanks a lot for, being here. I hope I was able to ask some definitely good questions. I was able to host you well. I'm very, very bullish on like, the Sophon and Avail partnership. And I've followed Seb and Zika Sync and Sophon at this point for a long time, so definitely very interested in that ecosystem. But yeah, thanks a lot, guys. It was fun. We'll probably have some of these more. We have hit probably 2,200 people, so that's a pretty good number. Active listeners,
Yes.
and then yeah, thanks a lot, Seb, and thanks a lot, Anurag.
Yeah.
Yep.
Big
Thanks a lot.
big thank you. And yeah, shout out to the Avail team who've really been probably one of the most pleasant teams to work with so far in crypto. So very happy to share the stage with Anurag and talk about this.
Yep.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Thanks
That's our
for
honor.
having us. On this podcast as AMA as well, but also in just very excited to be collaborating and with you guys. Pleasure.
Take care.
Okay.
See you.
Bye.